The Fifth Kind. At the time of the 2003 invasion of Iraq, the world looked on, uncertain about the motive behind the war. Was it simply about access to oil? Was it to insert a new regime more amenable to US interests? Was it to confiscate weapons of mass destruction? Time has told it was not the last. Wars have many layers and many agendas may be served by a single incursion. The confusion as to why we aggress our way into someone else's country is felt the most painfully of all by the brave servicemen and women who have to effect the invasions. Report from that quarter often tells an unfamiliar story.
In the time since I published Escaping from Eden, I've heard from many people who were involved in the incursion into Iraq in 2003, whose units were tasked with confiscating hard copy of ancient narratives that talk about who we are and where we came from.
It would be difficult to exaggerate the importance of such retrievals. The archaeological sites in question relate to the most ancient known narratives of human civilization, those of the ancient Mesopotamian cultures of Sumeria, Babylonia, Arcadia, and Assyria. Any artifacts from the sites concerned would have a direct bearing on the authority of narratives that predate every civilization and every religion on planet Earth today.
Back in 2001, Edgar Dean Mitchell was speaking at a disclosure event in Washington, and he said, if you are skeptical about this phenomenon, the best thing you can do is study the law of crash retrievals, because there you're looking at real objective material that needs to be interpreted. Study the law, he said, L-O-R-E. And what that means is you go to the eyewitnesses, you read the books where eyewitnesses have been interviewed, you begin to acquaint yourself with the indigenous narratives of our own generation, what has been known and spoken from one person to another person and is now being spoken from one generation to the next. There is always a report of what is going on, even before and even if never acknowledged by government authorities.
After decades of suppression, debunking, death threats, and even worse, what has caused this shift in government policy towards the UFO phenomenon? Are government authorities around the world preparing for greater disclosure? And what would such disclosure mean? Would it, as President Reagan suggested in the 1980s, usher in an age in which humanity can operate in a unified and productive way? Would it, in the words of Edgar Dean Mitchell, the sixth man to walk on the moon, enable humanity to take its place among a community of spacefaring civilizations? Could we be a more empowered, more sovereign species on planet Earth if we were to all understand our relationship with cosmic neighbors?
So when you have an astrophysicist and a consultant for the Pentagon, Eric Davis, acknowledging that these materials exist and that this research is happening, when you have a former military intelligence officer like Luis Elizondo telling the same story, it is a very significant shift in policy. Why has it happened? Are we being drip, drip fed information to habituate us to the idea that we are not alone in the universe and that there may be more to share further down the track? Certainly, I don't think we're going to have a big disclosure moment. I think what we're seeing is a drip, 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 so that in a generation's time, by the time governments are acknowledging contact with other species, 70% of us will be saying, I think I more or less knew that already.
The Fifth Kind. Click on the links in the description to watch the full video.
Author and researcher Paul Wallace probes the world's ancient mythologies for clues about the origins of the human race, and has published several books in the field of mysticism and spirituality. In the last decade, his work has probed the world's ancient mythologies for the insights they hold on our origins as a species and our potential as human beings. Paul's work in church ministry has included training pastors in the interpretation of biblical texts, working as a troubleshooter for communities of faith, and serving as an archdeacon in the Anglican Church in Australia. His background as a senior churchman makes it all the more surprising that Paul's latest book argues that human origins lie in our prehistoric contact with extraterrestrial species. You can find out more information and links to Paul Wallace in the description below, along with links to his published works.